Hello, everybody. It's the District 5960E Club on February 19, 2020. And we have, I think this might be our largest meeting to date after relaunch. So with 6 people here, and very excited about that. And here to welcome everyone. Lindy, I don't think that you have met everyone. Could you please just introduce yourself briefly as a new member and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Lindy Venestas. I came from the Twin Cities Knights Rotary Club. This was where my original club was. And I was able to go to Nicaragua on the Fast for Hope initiative in 2009. I can't believe it's been that long. And I'm just excited. I was part of the startup of this, working side by side with Don Craighead. And so I'm so happy that we are, and Marlene and I did a lot of work together too. But I'll say Marlene did most of it. So I'm really glad to be a part of this still ongoing.
Great. We, through the relaunch, I think, or through the past couple of years, lost a great number of members. So really glad that you stuck with it through the long term here. So that's great. Chrisanne, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, I'm Chrisanne Manolis. I live in Denver, but I spent most of my life in Minneapolis, coming from the Edina Rotary Club.
And you're an exchange student, just for Joel's benefit, to Brazil.
I was, Joel. I went to Brazil in 73, 74, and I did a GSE trip under the leadership of your dad. He helped.
Are you serious? Okay. That's just great, Chrisanne.
He, I mean, I took the group, but he trained me, and I adored your dad.
For those who don't know,
really good to hear.
Joel and I grew up in the same, our guest speaker, Joel and I grew up in the same community, Shakopee 5950 district. And Joel's dad, Jack, was a middle school or junior high principal at the time, but very, very passionate about Rotary. And what a neat tie-in, Chrisanne. Thanks so much for saying that. That's just great.
He had that hall of fame in the high school. Wait, was he middle school or high school? But you know, with all the exchange students and all their photos and all, I mean, it was unbelievable the way he supported Youth Exchange.
That's really great. Yeah. Thanks so much. That's awesome. Hey, Greg, do you want to say a few words and introduce yourself to Joel and Lindy?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg White. I'm sitting in the sun, so therefore I've turned my blinds away. I used to be a member of St. Paul Rotary and then a member of Golden Valley Rotary years ago, long before they admitted women. I don't know how long that was. But I was an exchange student to Sweden, 69, 70. And for the benefit of our guest speaker, I had dinner 2 nights ago with Ty Pratimwan, who I believe you know, who was an exchange student to the Faroe Islands 4 years ago, and his lovely, beautiful fiancée, Rachel.
Yeah. Wow. What a small world this has become.
It is
everything in Rotex is small.
Yeah.
And just to say that Joel was just super, I was country officer for Faroes at the time, and Joel was super supportive of Ty. Ty was our first student in Faroes for, gosh, I think 20 years. And Joel just kind of took Ty under his wings and did a lot with him. So Joel, thanks for that. Kirk, quick introduction.
Kirk Anderson in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin. It's about an hour east of the Twin Cities metropolitan area, St. Paul. I have been in Rotary since 2008 and came on board with Marlene to start the E-Club a number of years ago. Have kind of managed it and kept all the technology and things working until recently when this group of people got together and decided to relaunch. So I'm excited to be a part of that. I am and have been the host of Rotary Club Radio since 2010, which is a podcast. It's somewhat dormant now, but it may get relaunched here as my life slows down. I don't know when that will be. There's a primary election in our town for mayor yesterday, and I won the primary, so I'll be going to the
Yeah,
general.
yeah, yeah.
And
I was
I got,
saving that for the happy news, Kirk.
yeah,
Congratulations.
I'm happy. I got 65% of the vote, and so that was pretty good
Wow,
out
that's
of the three of us.
exceptional.
So yeah, so
Wow.
we're looking forward to April, and if I'm successful, then I'll be sworn in as mayor and hopefully make some positive changes for our town.
You'll be our most famous member.
Well, I don't know about that.
Oh, yeah,
It's fun.
so cool.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. And Joel, so I was able to download your photos, and I'm just going to put up here as you start to introduce yourself, the photo of you in front of, looks like London Bridge.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I'll be able to talk specifically about all of the pictures, but maybe it will give some context to what I'm saying if the members can have those images at
For sure. I just
in
wanted
front of them, huh? Yeah.
Yep, I wanted to put this one up so people could at least see what you look like. So yeah, give us a
Great.
quick introduction of yourself and launch right into your presentation if you'd like.
Great. Yeah, my name's Joel Cole. I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I grew up, as John mentioned, in Shakopee. My sister, who is 8 years older than I am, spent an exchange year in the Philippines in 78 and 79, and it piqued my interest in traveling abroad. And when I graduated in 86, I decided to take a year off before I went to school and applied for the Rotary Youth Exchange program. My dad, of course, was, as John mentioned, very active in the Shakopee Rotary Club. I think he probably went about 30 years without ever missing a meeting.
Mhm.
And after high school, when he retired, he actually became district governor of 595 and 596. I was accepted to go to Denmark on my exchange, and I picked Denmark because I had heard that there were topless beaches in Denmark. And as a horny 16 and 17-year-old man, young boy, I guess you could say, I thought that would be a great place to go. Needless to say, when everything was said and done, I was accepted to go to the Faroe Islands, where not only do they not have topless beaches, they don't have beaches at all. So it was a big change in geography for me, but it's a decision and an opportunity that's completely changed my life. I spent the first year in the Faroe Islands in 1986 and 87, and I immediately fell in love with the Faroe Islands and the people and the food culture and the isolation and the just raw, harsh, unforgiving nature of this archipelago in the middle of the North Atlantic. And decided early on in my stay as an exchange student that I would be returning, which I did at least once a year, every year, until I moved permanently in 2011. I was so obsessed with coming back to the Faroes that in 2007, I actually came back 5 times. Once in conjunction with a visit by Bill Clinton, who visited the islands and gave a keynote speech at a conference held here. And I was invited back to write all of the English dispatches, which were spread around the world for media sources to publish. My life in the Faroes has been a bit well, it's been a cacophony of things, to be honest with you. I've functioned as a teacher and as a construction worker and as a fisherman and as a tutor and as a journalist and as an expedition leader and a sailor. But I finally found kind of a permanent home and purpose in being a new dad and being an artist. So currently I reside in a very small village called Saltnes, which is in the middle of the islands. It's a very, very small village that's connected to the capital by tunnel, 10 minutes away. And my art studio is in an abandoned NATO base high in the mountains in the middle of the largest island called Streymoy. It's also, this NATO base, home to the prison, the local detention centers. So I pay my rent by instructing prisoners once a week in woodworking and artwork and philosophy and English and things like that. I hear some music playing. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. That's my phone.
Yeah. Okay. No big deal. John, I hope I'm chronologically going through this in a way that you find appropriate. Please tell me if you want me to veer in a different direction. Huh?
Go for it. No, this is great so far. I've just put up, I had your photo up, but I've just put a map of where the Faroes are in relation to Norway and Shetland, Scotland and Iceland, so people can kind of see the general geography. I think we all sort of know where it is, but I would have guessed it's further north than Iceland, so just kind of looking at the map there.
Yeah. Generally speaking, it's usually described as being in the middle of the triangle formed by Iceland, Scotland, and Norway.
Okay.
And although it's not the most isolated archipelago or island on the planet, it's damn well close. The unique thing about the Faroe Islands is that it has a very modern society, and it has, relative to its size, it has a vibrant and growing population. 95% of all exports are fish or fish-related technology. Particularly today, fish farmed salmon, which is exported all over the world, particularly Russia and China. However, I've been involved with one of the local fish farming companies, a company called Bakkafrost, developing a marketing plan for America, because they would like to branch out into North America, particularly America. As you hear, I don't only do the artwork, I also act as a translator, and I do some original English text writing for businesses that have English-speaking clients or English-speaking markets. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades, which one has to be here in the islands, because that's the way how you survive in this kind of closed community. You do a lot of things yourself. To get a little bit more specific about my main choice of work in my lifestyle, my artwork, I've recently been granted a project for the National Postal Administration, making 9 national stamps for the Postal Service. And the theme that I've chosen, funny enough, is immigration and integration. So I've decided to devote 9 stamps on 9 different themes that most immigrants experience chronologically during the course of choosing to live in a different part of the world. And that's one of the things that I'm working on right now, artistically.
And
living
Joel, were those stamps that would actual postage stamps for Faroes?
Yeah, these will be actual postage stamps. I actually work in sculpture, so it will be sculpture that's photographed and then turned into postal stamps.
Wow.
And although it is becoming quite obsolete to use stamps to transport correspondence, there's a huge community around the world that still finds stamp and stamp collecting a means to document a country's nationality and cultural identity. Sure. So I'm quite honored to be asked to do it, and I thought it appropriate that an immigrant uses the materials that he immigrated with to make a sculptural series about immigration. Yeah. Any questions? Now I've babbled for a while.
Yeah, well, while you were babbling, I've just been like going through some of your photos, which show a great deal of your artwork, just to give people a sense for what you do, kind of what the Faroes look like. This one is of, I think, your workshop. It has looks like a generator or something up on a DeWalt something. Anyway, just going.
Yeah, that must be. Yeah.
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm not sure if you've seen the picture of the workshop from the outside, but it's as I mentioned, it's an abandoned NATO military base that was used by the Danes and the Americans to maintain the radar network that ran from Greenland to Iceland and Iceland to the Faroes and Faroes to Scotland to monitor naval activity in the North Atlantic, particularly Russian sailing around the top of Norway. And they just simply don't need it now because of satellites and that kind of thing, but they didn't want to destroy it. So they gave it to the Faroese government, and the Faroese government manages it through the National Transportation Association, and they have rented it to the prison. So a unique story is that a journalist from Forbes magazine was in the Faroes doing a travel piece, and the taxi driver that was taking him back to the airport stopped above my studio and got out, and there's this absolutely gorgeous view. I think there's a picture of it that I have there. There's absolutely a gorgeous view of the fjord that lies below the NATO base where my art studio is. Have you seen that one yet, John? Has that one been shown?
Yeah, Joel, I think I'm on it. It's long white buildings with like grass or moss growing on top with the fjord kind of off to the left.
Yep. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. So this journalist said, "Wow, this is a great view," and the taxi driver said, "Yeah, and that's our prison." He said, "No." So he went home and he wrote an article about the Faroe Islands, and he either titled the article or wrote in the article that the Faroe Islands has the prison with the best view in the world.
That's right.
And I would have to agree. It's absolutely gorgeous. Great
Joel,
amounts of inspiration come.
If I may interrupt for 1 second, John, we can see thumbnails of the pictures, but we can't see the pictures themselves.
Oh, you can't. I'm so sorry. Here I am going through all the photos. Oh, God, I'm like, aren't these beautiful?
No, we can't see them, but I'm sure they're wonderful.
We're squinting.
How about now?
No.
Again, we see thumbnails.
Still not, huh?
We see your lovely face. Wow.
Thank you. Well, that's weird because how about now? Still thumbnail?
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
While he's giving those pictures out there, maybe I'll give an oral presentation so that you all can appreciate how the Faroe Islands, how the Faroese rely on an oral tradition to maintain their history and their language and their culture.
Sure.
I'm not used to this technology, so you'll have to excuse me. But the Faroe Islands are a mountainous archipelago, 18 islands. They are roughly 550 square miles in space, which is about the size of the greater metropolitan area. On those 18 islands, 17 of which are inhabited, live 52,000 people. There are anywhere from one family to about 30,000 people on any given island. My wife, for example, is genetically linked to an island called Fugloy, which is up in the northeastern part of the archipelago. And right now there are roughly 11 people living on that island.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
Roughly 11?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask, and some people have their address out there so they get lower taxes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So there's some permanent addresses out there, but people aren't out there all the time. But I think officially there's about 11 or 12 people that live out there. Her father being one of them. He lives out there on the weeks that he's not sailing. He sails 2 weeks and then he's back home on 2 weeks. And the beautiful thing about going out to an island like Fugloy, which means bird island, is that you go back in time about 40 years, 30 or 40 years. You know, there's a different way of communicating. There's a different sense of time. There's a different sense of purpose and of haste. There's a different way of preparing food out on the outer islands. And it's just a remarkable experience to leave what I would otherwise call regular society here on the mainland and then go out to the outer islands. Yeah.
Can you guys hear Joel?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Lindy, Greg, you can't hear. Can you hear us?
I hear you, Joe.
Hello.
I
Yeah,
can
I
hear
think
I
we
hear
all,
you great.
I
I
think
hear
we
you
can
great.
all hear everyone except for Greg.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg?
Can you message Greg and tell him to call back in? Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe he's doing that right now. Yeah, since he's not hearing us.
You can still see him, but
Yeah.
While we're pausing,
Um,
when I switched over to the map of Faroes, were you guys able to see that?
Yes. It's on right now.
yeah.
Hey, Joel, I was going to say, I met an exchange student from Faroe Islands. She's from Klaksvik. She was out in Orono maybe 10 years ago, an adorable girl.
What was her name?
Well, her name is Sophia, and she's
Sophia, yeah?
from Klaksvik. Are you from
Yeah.
there? Are you from there? Where are you?
My exchange was in Klaksvik.
Oh,
Yeah, and 10 years ago was 2010. I was preparing to move to the Faroe Islands, so I wasn't very active with Rotary. So I don't know that person.
oh yeah.
But the Faroes are so small that if I were to ask around, I would be put in contact with that person immediately. So
I would love to get your email at some point, and I'll send you her information.
yeah, nice to meet her. See
Yeah.
how her connections to Minnesota are.
Mm-hmm. She's a
Chris
sweet.
and I added Joel's email address to today's calendar invite, so you should be able to see it.
Mhm.
If you go into
Thank
the
you.
invite.
Thank you.
Mm.
Welcome. Greg, can you hear us yet?
Yeah, I reconnected. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay. Sounds good.
Hi, Greg. Welcome back.
So Joel, I just pulled a map up, and Fugloy, we see it here at the northeast corner of the island, outermost island.
Yeah.
And tell us again where your studio is.
My studio is in a valley called Mjøskadalur, MJO with a line through it, RK.
Okay.
ADALUR, and it's immediately north of the capital of Toshan.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
There's no village there. It's just the NATO base. So sometimes it doesn't show up very well on maps, but it's the valley called Mjøskadalur, which means the valley of fog, because it's always filled with fog.
Got it.
Yeah. Which brings me to another point. The weather here at 62 degrees north is windy and rainy and usually somewhere around the freezing mark, either 2 or 3 degrees above it or a degree or 2 below it. And that's pretty much year round. We don't have much change in temperature. It can get as hot as 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 55, 60 if it's a really, really nice day. But basically it stays in the high 30s and low 40s, somewhere around there Fahrenheit, which is about 3, 4, 5 degrees Celsius right there. That weather climate is probably what makes for a very hospitable people living here. The Faroese are known by everyone who has come here as a very hospitable, welcoming people who love to show visitors and foreigners and guests a unique form of hospitality, which includes food and excursions into the mountains and sailing on the fjords or into the open sea and fishing or hunting. There's a very openness and an enthusiasm to make people's visits to the Faroes singular and unique, particularly if it's their first time. That hospitality, however, does change as you stay longer. And as some of you may know, coming from smaller communities have their own very unique social dynamics, and it's hard to permeate those social dynamics if you're just a visitor for a couple weeks or a couple months. Once you get a grasp of what's going on socially in the Faroes, it's an absolutely fascinating place to live. And although some people might assume that it is a isolated and lonely and dark and unforgiving place, which it can be, the opposite is actually true. The opposite is actually true. There's great moments of warmth between people and kindnesses and honesty and I've found the Faroese people to be some of the hardest working and proud people that I've ever met. And I'm actually quite happy to admit that of all the nationalities that I could have made claim to, I feel like now I am more Faroese than I've been of anything else since I knew that I didn't have to be American. Which must be said that I'm not Faroese, and I never will be Faroese. But it's the most of one nationality that I've ever felt since I knew that I didn't have to be American. Hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to anybody?
To all the exchange students in the room, I tell you.
There you go. There you go.
We're all nodding.
Okay, yeah. Good. I'm glad. I don't see any of you. I'm talking on my phone, so I do apologize.
We see you. We're back at the London. So the photos that I just went through, you guys, is that's what Joel had sent to me. So that's sort of the extent. We saw some of your artwork. Can you talk about your family a bit? I'm going to go back to the picture of your wife and the kids. There's this one in London with the two.
Yeah.
Then there's the
I can back up even before that.
Yep.
I met a Faroese woman in 1989, and she came to visit me in America, and we were married in America. And we lived for a decade in America, and then things fell apart. So we divorced, and I decided to move back to the Faroes, and she didn't. So we've kind of swapped spaces. Mm-hmm. She's in Minnesota, and I'm here. We have a daughter, and I have a stepson from that relationship. Annika is 24, and my stepson Jakob is 38, and they both live in Shakopee and New Prague in Minnesota. And then I'm while visiting, actually the trip that I came to see to deal with the Bill Clinton visit, I met a woman, and we had a relationship for 4 years and had a daughter. Eva is 8 years old. And I moved to the Faroe Islands to be her father, to be here when she came into the world. And I don't regret that. I think it was a wonderful reason to actually make the move to the Faroe Islands. However, daily life with her mother didn't turn out either. So that relationship fell apart. And a friend of mine, Christina, whose relationship went sour the same time that mine with Eva's mom went sour, and I started talking. And from friendship came romance, and we now are married 6 years, and we have 2 boys. Ezra is 2, and Noah is 1. And we have our hands full. I'm so fucking tired. Yeah, they're great boys. They're multilingual. Well, Ezra is. He's speaking both English and Faroese, and Noah is starting to learn more English because I've decided to stay home with the boys as much as possible while my wife's psychiatrist career takes off.
That's great.
We recently bought a new house in this village that I told you about called Saltnes, which means the Salt Peninsula. And we bought it because it's right at the mouth of a tunnel that leads to the capital 10 minutes away. So we're away from the hustle and bustle of quote unquote the big city, but we have quick access to it as well. So that's my family history there. I think on Facebook it says it's complicated, but
it's complicated.
Yeah, and it is quite complicated, but I'm very happily married and very happy to be a dad of young boys, even though I'm pooped.
Well, we're looking at the boys right now, and they sure are cute. This is the photo.
Yeah.
The two of you with the two boys, and looks like you have some traditional vest on.
Yeah, those are the Faroese national dresses. It stems from the Norwegian national dress. It's kind of a take on it, but it's become Faroese. I made my own national dress myself while in America in the mid '90s, and I still wear that national dress. It's quite uncommon for men to make national dresses here, but no one was making it for me, so I decided to make it myself, and that's what I did. So, and Christina, my wife, actually embroidered my wedding vest that I wore when we were married, which was really quite an honor. Yeah.
Well, Joel, I'm going to break for a sec. I'm going to throw it out to the group. What questions do you guys have for Joel?
I would like to know about Joel's art. It appears that you are a turner. Is that correct?
Partly, yeah, partly. Do you want me to talk about it, or do you have anything in specific that you want to know?
Well, what are your media?
Well, I work mostly in wood. I consider myself an intuitive artist, so I create with what's in front of me. And fortunately, I've collected about 40 tons of wood that I've brought to the Faroe Islands because the Faroe Islands don't have any trees, which makes me kind of a unique artist here in the Faroes because who?
That's part of my question. Yeah. Where do you get wood?
I get it from Minnesota.
From Minnesota?
No, I get it from Minnesota, yeah. When I moved in 2011, I had a stash of about, it was somewhere between 18 and 22 tons of wood that I had felled the trees, planked it out, partitioned it out, and then warehoused it, stacked it so that it could dry. And I was fortunately sponsored by the local cultural house to have a large-scale national exhibition of my work when I moved. And they paid for my work to be brought over. And in that container, I packed my life up from America, and I brought it over to the Faroes. I brought my entire cabinetry shop and those 20 tons of material that I had prepared, and all of my tools and machines and hand tools and everything that I used to do what I did in America. And I set up shop in a number of places until I found my home where I am today. Just last year, I lost both my parents inside of 3 weeks, and I was back in America taking care of funeral arrangements and mourning. And I don't do that very well. As you know, some people go to work when they're sad, and I was very sad, so I went to work, and I cut down 9 very large sugar maple trees and cut them up into planks at a friend's sawmill up by Clearwater, up by Alexandria, farther up there, or closer to the cities than Alexandria, but up by Clearwater. And then I got another container and filled it with 25 to 30 tons of wood that I had processed and shipped it back home.
Wow.
And what's that?
Why not?
Only 20 pounds. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. The unique thing about that story is that I have enough for the rest of my life. I probably had enough without taking the second container home. But I have 3 children here in the Faroes. The 2 oldest are already looking to be very creative individuals, and I hope that the 3rd one is too. So I wanted them to have a wealth of material to use if they choose to take over my art studio when I'm done creating or when I die. So now there's enough wood here in the Faroes for 3 people's lifetime to do what they need to do, and it's all mostly spalted and figured sugar maple from the southern banks of the old River Warren, which is the Minnesota River Valley. And the reason that I like that wood is because it grows very slowly. It's facing north, so it gets little sun, and it's the area where the farmers couldn't get to, so they didn't cut down the old trees. So I have trees that are up towards 200 years old that I've felled and planked out. And again, I'm an intuitive artist, but I'm also a sustainable artist. So these were trees that were either dead or dying or that had already fallen onto the ground. So I haven't harvested anything that for the pure sake of harvesting. And usually that involves cultivating a relationship with landowners so that I can maintain that relationship and they feel good about where the material is going. I treat their land well, and then they usually commission me to make a piece out of the tree that was on their property, which is a nice story to tell when they show this piece off inside their home. Either a piece of sculptural furniture or a piece of freestanding sculpture. Yeah.
Joel, I have the photo of just a really lovely dining room table with pieces on top of it. It looks like sculpture in the background, looks like some coffee tables in the corner, some painted artwork, all your work. Tell us about this photo.
That photo was taken in a private home of an individual who is an architect and photographer. And he and his wife maintain a website and a business called House and Home here in the Faroes and in Denmark. And they hosted what's called a private exhibition for me. And it's an idea that I've kind of been cultivating for a couple of years. It's where I enter a private home and I bring all of my stuff along and I display my work in a private home in a gallery format, a casual gallery format. And then the homeowners invite their social network or their professional network for a short presentation about who I am and my work and my materials, and then a question and answer about the pieces. I talk about my process and the materials and some of my inspirations, and then a nice glass of wine and some grapes and crackers and cheese, and a good conversation is had by all. What's nice about that for the people doing the hosting is that they get to show off their home, and usually it's in conjunction with unveiling a commissioned piece that they've had for me, that they've asked me to make for them. And they also get to they have a reason to invite people to be together with them that they maybe don't have any other reason to do so. And for me, although selling work is always nice, it's not necessarily the only reason that I do something like that. I very much enjoy having a venue to talk about the more intimate and the more personal dialogues that I have while generating material for creation. Like the research that I do on a theme before I work on a piece is very important to me, and how I treat the material is very important to me. And in those intimate settings, you get to establish a rapport with the people there that you don't get to when you're in a formal gallery. It's more casual, more relaxed, and I very much like talking to people who can actually respond to me and ask a question, so I know that I'm offering information that they're interested in. So that's where that picture was taken. That was his private home. He and I have an arrangement where he gets a piece or two from me every 6 months or so, and then he takes pictures of all of my work in his home. And those are the pictures that you're seeing. And it's amazing how good pictures do justice to work that you're satisfied with. I was very satisfied with that table, but I was more satisfied with it when it was presented in photography form. I just
Context.
love how it worked. Yeah.
It's
Thanks
beautiful.
so much.
Yeah.
I'll bet people there love your wood furniture if there are no trees on the islands. I mean, that must be a real treat for them to have in their homes.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword there. It's a unique and it's obscure, and it's becoming sought after as a. It's not exclusive, but I have a lot of people asking for my work, so my prices are slowly going up. So it's becoming a bit of a collecting type of thing for people who want something novel in their home.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, the Faroese have no history of wood art. Wood has always been scarce in the islands. The only wood that they've had are shrubs and bushes, and then driftwood, and that was saved for kitchen utensils and building homes and building boats. And wood was a material that was used to build things, not to create artwork with. So I've struggled in the 6 or 7 years that I've been active as an artist to educate the Faroes that wood can actually be used in a purely artistic aesthetic, and that is an ongoing education that I work on here, because a lot of people here just will not recognize my work as anything artistic. They don't see that in it. So although it is unique and different, it's sometimes not understood by the Faroese, which is why I'm in 23 galleries in 5 different countries, because I wouldn't be able to survive only with the Faroese market.
What countries are you in?
I'm in Iceland and the Faroes and Denmark and Scotland and America.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at Gallery 360 in Edina.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, your work is beautiful. I love this table.
Thank you. Every couple of years I do a flagship piece, and that is definitely my flagship piece right now. It's probably about 500 pounds, and it has a combination of metal and bone and resin and leather and stainless steel wire. And it's just a kind of a cacophony of wood and different things put together. And I thought it worked pretty good.
Now, Joel, as I look at some of your pieces, I don't know how you could almost get more artistic, but the Faroese don't see it in that way. What's more traditional in terms of Faroese artwork? Just different materials, or what why is there that impression?
Faroese traditionally view painting and drawing as artwork. It's mostly two-dimensional. Yeah, sculpture is something that has been migrated towards for public art. There's a lot of bronze statues that have been done to commemorate men or events or folklore. But sculpture really hasn't found its place in the home in the Faroes. It's mostly two-dimensional artwork, painting in particular. Landscape painting is really kind of the big thing in the Faroes. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, you must do ceramics too. Did we see kind of lattice work on some cylinders? I don't know what's the word. Cylinders.
I'm sorry. Could you say that one more time? I didn't catch the question.
I think it's not a question. I'm sort of babbling. I really like the white cylinders that look like lattice work. And are those ceramics? Do you do ceramic work too? Or
I'm not quite sure what you're looking at.
You said you're a potter also, right? Ceramics.
I'm not a potter. No, I have thrown in the past, but I don't do ceramics now.
Oh, okay.
maybe.
Oh, there's a postcard, Joel. Where is it here? It says Joel Cole. Let's see.
Oh, no,
Artist
that's it.
and Turner.
No, but go to the previous
Oh,
picture.
that looks like it too, but that could be wood.
Oh, no.
Back
Oh,
the other direction. One more. One more.
Where to go?
Okay.
I
This
don't
guy?
remember sending any.
I don't remember.
It looked like a white,
I know Lindy and I just saw it because we both,
yeah, a white
where did that go?
glass that was made out of white ceramic kind of box, like woven.
Oh,
Like woven.
is
There we
it
go.
this one?
Yeah.
Looks like a white, yeah, like a lattice. What is that sitting in your shop or maybe your kitchen? There's a fireplace in the corner with fire going.
Oh. Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you. Now that's made by a ceramic artist friend of mine named Guri Polson, and that is ceramics. Those are candle holders. And she's also an immigrant. She was Faroese born, but she lived most of her life in Denmark, and she moved back to the Faroes when she was an early adult. And she makes wonderful work. Yeah, that is ceramics. I do apologize.
See, Joel,
That's not my work.
You could have taken credit. We wouldn't have known.
I could have, but that it would. Yeah, that Guri's a wonderful woman. She's I'll have to tell her that you like that. Thank you for saying so. That wasn't my work.
Okay. Any other questions, gang?
This has been a treat.
No, very, very interesting though. Very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Joel.
listening.
Thank you, Joel.
with us.
What
Thank
time
you,
is it?
Joel.
What time is it in the Faroe?
It's 11:24 right now
11:24.
p.m.
So you were a
Yeah.
trooper with your young kids joining us so late, and we so appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really my pleasure. Thank you for listening, and really a fascinating idea to have a Rotary meeting online. I wonder what my dad would say if he were still alive.
Yeah, it's the new wave. There's, I think, what Chrisanne, over 200 e-clubs now around the world. I mean, it's a really growing way to reach people who otherwise, aren't making it to the weekly meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
You can join our club, Joel.
yeah, Joel, join us.
I'm not a Rotarian.
This is how you become one.
So
In all your free time.
Right.
Just have just 10:30 every Wednesday night. Plan on it.
My wife would kill me.
The schedule would kill you.
Great,
Yeah.
sounds good. Well, we end our meeting. I don't know if you remember the four-way test, Joel, from the many Shakopee meetings that you attended, but we feel it's a nice way to go out. So if we can all repeat this, it's on the screen. If you happen to know it, Joel, go along, otherwise we'll go for it. The four-way test of the things we think, say, and do.
Is it the
Is it the
truth?
truth? Is it fair?
fair,
Well concerned?
Will it build
goodwill
goodwill
And better friendships? Will it be beneficial
Yes.
to all
to all
concerned?
concerned?
Yes.
Nice messages. Can't thank you enough for joining us. This is just great.
Thank you, Joel.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Well, there we go. Our first official interview
Oh,
from
he was
former
fascinating.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, really nice. What do you guys think of the format? I mean, interesting enough to tune into another one if people are prepared with some photos. I mean, we had some technical difficulties here, but we made it through.
Yeah.
And part of it was just connecting from Faroes. So
Yeah.
You know what I like? Because I think originally we had questions on like, what did you learn on your exchange and stuff. But I like this where we get to know about his life now. I really like hearing his history, how he ended up back in the Faroe Islands. I mean, it was just beautiful.
yeah, I think he's a little unique in that Joe's living in Faroes, and and other people we would interview would clearly have their lives, around. Oh, there's a chat. Okay. Okay, thanks, Kirk. Let's see. Okay, we can continue the conversation. I'm just gonna turn off the recording here. If I could, here, stop the share. Okay, until next week.